Hi, my name is Ray Delahousie, but some of you may know me as Coach Ray. So today's video, I'm revisiting a popular subject, crosswind takeoff and landings. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. Now, we dive deeper into these topics in our online ground school, and these social videos, well, they're a great way to get started out because, well, they're free, but you can also dive into our online ground school for 2 weeks free. Go to MzeroAtrial.com to get started on that. Crosswind takeoff and landings are going to be a big part of your aviation career, and rarely are you going to fly on days that, well, the winds are calm and right down the runway. So you need to develop that skill set and understanding and continue to build it to be a safe, smart pilot. Now, to demonstrate this today, I'm going to be taking 514 Papa Romeo in the pattern, and we're going to fly through this together. So let's review the technique and some common errors on the ground where it's a bit more calm. So as pilots, we must know the performance characteristics and limits of not only our aircraft, but the limits of ourselves as pilots as well. So setting those personal minimums is very important here, but we also need to challenge ourselves. And one of the best ways to do that is take an instructor with you on those days that are just outside of those personal minimums and work on developing that crosswind skill set. Now, we're going to be using runway 18 this morning. Winds are 210 at 10 knots, and they may be gusting 15 or 20, which means we're going to have a crosswind from the right and roughly 6 to 8 knots at any given time. Now we're going to check the weather again before we take off to confirm this. So knowing this information, what's our crosswind correction going to be for takeoff? So with a crosswind from the right, we're going to apply full aileron deflection into the wind, so that's a right aileron. Now the P factor slipstream from the propeller hitting the tail, we're going to need to apply full right rudder as well until we gain speed and control surfaces become more effective. We'll reduce that aileron deflection and we'll start using more of that left rudder to keep us aligned on center. Now you might be asking, how much deflection and rudder input do I need on takeoff and landing? Well, simply put, as much as required to keep the plane on center line, coordinated, and stable. Now let's talk about a few common errors before we get in the plane. One of these errors can include not flying a stabilized traffic pattern and approach. So flying stabilized simply means that you're maintaining proper airspeed, altitude, climb and descent rates during all parts of the pattern. So if, for instance, you should be at 1,800 feet and 100 knots in the downwind and you're flying, well, anything different than that, you're not stabilized. So if you don't correct for this error, it's going to magnify and greatly affect the potential for that great landing that you want for yourself and especially your passengers. Something else that gets forgotten about is, well, the wind, which is ironic because it's a huge component of crosswind takeoff and landings. Now as pilots, we can't just zone out in the flight deck. You must know where the wind is coming from, the effect it will have on your airplane during takeoff and landing, as well as each section of the pattern and how to compensate for that. Now, failure to do this is going to lead to, well, those rougher than intended landings that we've all experienced at least once. Now, if you're missing your touchdown point and floating, you're most likely carrying too much airspeed and the plane simply still has energy to fly. Now, this goes back to knowing your airspeed and flying that stabilized pattern and final approach. If your touchdown speed is, say, 65 knots and you're crossing over the threshold at 75 or even 80, you're going to float, especially in a low-wing airplane like the SR20, and it's probably a smart decision to go around. Another common error is drifting off centerline. This is most likely because you do not have enough corrective input applied with the ailerons and rudder, or you might have, well, incorrect input, or maybe none at all. So for me, I was releasing my crosswind correction just before touchdown without even realizing it. And once I figured that out, I started to make real progress. Now, a final tip that can help is using the heading bug. If you're practicing in the pattern, use the heading bug to mark the wind direction. In doing so, you now have a clear visual reference at all times as to where the wind is coming from at any part during the pattern, and you can make those corrective adjustments and stay ahead of the plane. Remember, work smarter, not harder. The goal of crosswind takeoff and landings is to be safe, stabilized, coordinated, and control the airplane at all times. Don't let it control you. If you feel like that's happening, it's probably a good time to execute that go-around. So let's review crosswind limits. Now the crosswind component limit for this plane is 21 knots, so we're within limits there. Now my personal minimums are 15 knot crosswind, so we're good to go there as well. All right, I've talked way too much, guys, but I want to get some of the basic thoughts out of the way while we're here on the ground and not dealing with, well, a busy environment. Now it's time to head to the plane, practice what we just reviewed, and see, well, if Coach Ray still has that crosswind skill set. Let's go.
Georgetown, ATIS information, whiskey, time 1356 Zulu. Wind 210 at 15, gust 20, visibility 10 miles. Sky condition few, 1,700. Temperature 27, dew point 23, altimeter 29903. Georgetown landing and departing, runway 18, visual approach in use. Bird advisories in effect. Departing VFR aircraft, advise ground control direction of flight, and if you require run-up, advise on initial contact. You have information, whiskey.
All right, guys, so we've got information whiskey. The wind is what it was when I checked it, about an hour and a half ago. So we're departing 18. We're going to have a crosswind from the right. So we're going to do full aileron deflection into the wind as soon as we take off. And as those control surfaces become more effective with speed, we're going to slowly release that pressure and stay on that center line with our rudder pedals, right, using that left rudder. So I'm going to taxi out. I'm going to get the run-up done and everything, go through all our pre-flight checks and everything, make sure the aircraft is good to go. And if it is, you guys will catch up with me at the whole short line. Let's go. All right, guys, so we're holding short 18. We've got that heading bug, right? 210, we've bugged our wind so we can see where that wind is coming from just simply by looking at that HSI. So we are all configured, we are set and ready. We're holding short 18, and I just have to call tower and let them know we are ready to go. So mixture, fuel pumps on, lights are on, seat belts, caps is removed. Got our altitude set here. Circuit breakers all good, static, alt air. Everything's set there, we're on tower, we've got our squawk code, lights, camera, action. All right, we are ready. And let's go full screen here just so we can get a better look at the traffic. And Georgetown Tower, 6514, Papa Romeo, holding short 18, ready to go.
Number 4, Papa Romeo, Georgetown Tower, fly left traffic, report midfield with your request. Runway 18, clear for takeoff.
Left traffic, report our request midfield, and 18 clear for takeoff, 514 Papa Romeo. All right, here we go, guys. Final is clear, runway is clear, and you can see that windsock. Yeah, we've got a good little crosswind from the right. All right, so full deflection into the wind, that's to the right. We use all the runway we can. Now that wind's gusting, we've got a good amount of wind, so we're probably going to rotate a little bit sooner. So get on center line. Make sure you're on center line before you depart. There we go. That right rudder's coming in. All right, power set, airspeed's alive. Everything looks good, sounds good. Holding center line. Aileron's becoming more effective, releasing that pressure. There's 70, and up we go. All right, climbing out at 85, raise the nose a little bit, clear obstacles, positive rate, flaps coming up. And he told us to make left traffic, caps altitude is 1300. So now we can look at that HSI, that heading bug, right? And we've got a quartering headwind, so that wind's going to push us back into the pattern. So we've got to compensate, right? Maybe a little rudder, a little aileron to point us a little more into the wind. So 100 to go. Now we're going to start that turn, caps
600.
Flaps up, and we're on the map page. Now we're staying coordinated in the turn, keeping that climb coming. Now that wind's still going to push us in, right? Airspeed's good. Got a direct crosswind now. Now it's going to switch, starting to switch to a tailwind. So I'm going to stop my turn a little bit early. And now I'm going to turn 200 feet to go to pattern altitude. Now we can see that heading bug coming back now. We've got a tailwind. There's 1800, power back, 50%. Now we've got that direct tailwind. Want to be on top of our speed and altitude. There's 50%, 1800. Now we've got like a quartering tailwind.
Tower 514 Papa Romeo, midfield downwind, requesting touch and go.
4 Papa Romeo, runway 18, clear touch and go.
18, clear touch and go, 514 Papa Romeo.
All right, that heading bug's down there, so we got that visual reference. 120 on our speed. We're going to start walking that power back about 25%. We still got the tailwind, right? So our ground speed's going to increase pretty good. Starting our descent, making sure we're flying a good pattern, which it looks like we are. Slowing down to 100, looking good. 45, flaps 50, below 150 speed checks. All right, now we're going to make our base turn. I got to pay attention to what that wind's doing, right? That wind, that heading bug's coming around, so now that wind's pushing us out. So steepen that turn a little bit. Stay coordinated, keep our speed up.
We've got whiskey and it'll be a full stop.
There's 90 knots, that's what we want on our base, 90 knots. Now we've got a quartering headwind, right? It's pushing us away from the runway. And then once we turn in on that final, now we're going to have that same crosswind we did on takeoff.
Are provided. Squawk 0614.
All right, let's get back on our speed, right? We just talked about that being on speed.
Intercept final 3.5 miles ahead of Cirrus at 3,900.
Slowing down back to 90, there we go. And it's gusting, so I'm only doing 50% flaps.
We'll report the final approach section. We'll be looking for the Cirrus 9 whiskey.
All right, now we're turning final, because that crosswind's going to start blowing us away.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out. Thanks for your help.
A little bit of power, staying coordinated. There's 90 knots, and we're going to slow to about 80.
500.
All right, 500. We're stabilized. No more configuration changes. Runway's in sight. I got 180.
Southwest. Thanks for your help.
All right, power's coming
Zero
back.
Tango X-ray, rudder free exchange proof.
Thanks. We'll see you later.
And we're just going to let it settle. I was a little fast, so we're just going to pitch the nose up just a little bit, and that'll bleed off some of that airspeed. Now I'm back to 85. Slowing down to 80. Little trim up, 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, I'm crabbing into the wind, right? A little right aileron. As I get closer to the ground, there's 80 knots. Little aileron deflection in. Now I'm going to push that left rudder to get that nose on center line.
595 whiskey, Papa, with you on the visual.
Little deflection, as much as it takes to stay coordinated on center line.
Runway 18, clear to land.
Power to idle, looking for those 1,000 footers.
595 whiskey, Papa, runway 18.
Nice, full deflection, right? Because I'm slowing down. Flaps check. All right, on center line, full power's coming in, full deflection. Trying to hold that center line. There's rotation speed up. All right, climbing out, positive rate. Flaps coming up. All right, guys, cameras cut off for whatever reason, but here's good practice, right? I felt like we were in the zone, right? We had a pretty good traffic pattern, pretty decent landing. We'll check the cameras, but I think it was pretty good. But now we've got to extend our downwind for traffic because it's getting busy, and this is something that happens a lot. So we're just waiting for him to call our base. We've got traffic on a 5-mile final off our left wing. So I saw the first traffic he was talking about. Okay, now I've got the second one. So basically, we're just flying the downwind now, and we're holding our altitude and our speed All right, that traffic is crossing off my left wing, got him holding 18.
Papa Romeo, traffic you're looking for is off your left, 1.5 miles, base approved, number 2, runway 18, clear to land.
That traffic in sight, base approved, 18, clear to land, 514 Papa Romeo.
All right, he cleared us to turn base. I'm going to give that guy a little bit more room. There we go, I'm 45 with that plane, so now I'm going to start my base.
81891.
Stay coordinated, little nose up to hold that altitude.
Traffic checks 2
All right,
miles.
because we've got that horizontal component of lift that's going to pull us. All right, slowing to 45% power, looking for 100 knots. I'm at 115. Slowing down. All right, guys, this is going to be to a full stop. Now remember something to think about. If you are doing pattern work and you've requested a full stop, if you don't like the way the landing is looking, if you're not stabilized, go around. Don't feel the pressure that just because you've told the controller you're doing a full stop, that doesn't mean you can't go around. Right? You are pilot in command. You have final authority. Right? Don't put yourself in a situation you can't get out of. I said full stop, but if I don't like what I see and I'm not stabilized, then I'm going around.
Shutdown tower, traffic in sight, aerosol 221.
So let's slow back down. We gained a little bit of speed, right? I'm talking,
Number 3, one-way
not let that tailwind, catch up with me. So let's refocus, pitch up a little bit, bleed off some of that airspeed. There's 110. Power back to 15%. Roughly, there's 100 knots. All right, speed checks below 150, which we are. Pitch the nose down, flaps 50. Relieve some of that pressure with our trim. And now we've got that heading bug, right? Tells us that wind is still, right? Just a visual, that wind is crosswind from the right.
Whiskey, turn left, taxiway, Juliet, cutting around.
So I'm using the ailerons to turn into the wind, a little right aileron.
1029, no delay on the runway.
And a little bit of rudder to stay coordinated.
500.
No delay,
All right, 500, no more changes. And I'm doing whatever I need to do to keep this plane tracking on center line. Now my nose is not tracking the center line. My nose is pointed that way and the runway's over here. But as long as we're tracking right down that center line, we're good. So there's 90 knots. So now I can test it, right? What do I need to track on that center line when I get close to the runway? A little left rudder, and now that puts my nose right on the center line. So that's my corrective input. Looking good. We'll start to feel a little bit of that gust over these trees, so you gotta be ready for it. There it is. Little power, 85 knots, slowing to 80, looking good. Little bit of deflection in. All right. Runway's made, power coming to idle. Right aileron, left rudder. Just as much pressure as I need to stay on center line, aiming for the 1,000 footers. Hold it back, there we go. Let that nose wheel ride. Let all the pressure, power come back, energy bleed off. There we go. Nice job, guys. Whew.
Number 4, Papa Romeo, turn left on runway 11, cutting ground.
Left 11, contact ground, 514 Papa Romeo.
All right, let's go to ground real quick. There we go. On ground, left on 11. Let me talk to this guy, get my taxi instructions, and then we'll finish up, guys.
And Georgetown ground, Cirrus 514 Papa Romeo, clear 18 on runway 11, going to the midfield T hangars.
Cirrus 514 Papa Romeo, Georgetown ground, taxi Lima, Foxtrot, Ramp, Hotel.
Lima, Foxtrot, Ramp, Hotel, 514 Papa Romeo.
All right, guys. So, not bad, right?
Georgetown ground, 3 Charlie, Tango.
Turn this radio down a little bit.
Charlie Tango runway.
What'd you guys think? We had a pretty good takeoff and landing, I think. Did pretty good. It could have been a little better. I could have had a little bit more authority on that first landing to hold center line. But that's, you know, you deal with those gusts and you've got to be ready for it. But all in all, we stayed coordinated, we stayed safe, stayed pretty much on that center line, and we controlled the aircraft, not the other way around. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. What are some of your tips that you've learned and experienced to help you with your crosswind takeoff and landings? We'd love to hear about it. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in another video. And most importantly, remember, a good pilot is always learning. Have a good one, guys. We'll see ya.